Hey, what's up guys? So today we're going to be talking about The Amazing Spider-Man number 19. The first comic book directly after the Dark Web event that just ended. So if you're curious about that, just watch my previous videos on it. I will outright talk about the comic itself. So if you haven't read it and you want to know what happens before you hear me talk about it, then probably do so right now. Otherwise, if you just want to follow along the story through my videos, then you're welcome to do so as well. But without further ado, let's begin. We begin the story mid-team up with Spider-Man and Black Cat, and we start with what Spider-Man's thinking. I don't want to jinx it, but I can't help myself. I'm gonna say it. Life is almost, sorta, kinda good. Black Cat says, when you offered to warm me up on a cold night, Spider-Man cuts her off and says, would you have come if I said it was a hot work date busting the Soho Scorchers, man? And she goes, ew, no. And he says, hence my word smithery. We continue with what he's thinking. Not perfect, a hair short of great, just a solid good. Working for Norman Osborn has put a little cash in the bank and genuinely been a not suck experience. We cut away to an interaction he had with Norman in the lab, and Norman says, Peter, I say this with all sincerity. Your novel solution to this trifling engineering problem does not suck. And he goes, thank you? We continue his thought process with, my Spidey game is back on point and folks seem to have noticed. The neighborhood has been a lot more friendly. And then we cut immediately to after the fight and they're both hanging out on top of a skyscraper with a cup of coffee each. Spider-Man starts off the conversation by saying, I'll take payment in hot chocolate any day of the week. She responds with, which is why you're poor. He goes, shh. Coca Bliss. She says, Peter, after the chaos of the last few weeks, what do you think about taking a week off? He says, I don't know. Hold on a while. I'll call up Evil and ask it to chill. Black Cat continues, I'm serious. The city won't fall apart without Spider-Man for one weekend. He says, I could come up with reasons it would. She says, do any of those reasons not involve the words power and responsibility? He's left speechless. She continues, there's a ski lodge and a spa I know, just upstate. Not touristy, high class. Silk sheets. Catches his attention and he responds with, silk's my favorite of the organic fibers. At this point, Spider-Man and Black Cat have a date set. We cut to the day of the travel and she's driving fast and Peter's like, are you trying to kill me? She responds with, one doesn't keep a convertible to drive with the top up. There is still so much to teach you about the finer things in life. And he tries getting all snuggly and warm and he's like frostbite? Mind you, this is winter season. She responds with, use the seat warmer, you infant. What did you tell May about our little trip? And he's like, I'm a grown man, Felicia. I go where I want. We cut back to previous events with Aunt May, and he's saying, it's just for the weekend, you can get me on my cell, and I'll send you the number of the hotel. She goes, for the engineering convention? And he's stuffing his mouth with Aunt May food. Yeah, boring engineering. Aunt May says, I hope you and Felicia have a nice time. Don't forget to wear a raincoat. Oh man, Aunt May is so motherly. He gets pancakes stuck in his throat as he's eating because Aunt May said this. We cut back to them in the car and Peter says, she packed cookies and screams, what are you doing? She lets go of the wheel and says, enjoying the drive, of course. And he starts thinking, there might actually be something there with Felicia. Maybe this weekend, I don't know. Maybe we take a step forward into whatever comes next. For the first time in a long time, my life is finally turning a corner. As he's thinking this, he also immediately grabs the wheel because, of course, Felicia decided to just stand up as the car is moving. Mind you, again, this car is a convertible, so her standing up actually makes sense. But Peter Parker's doing good. He's feeling good at this point. They finally make it to the resort, but there's a problem. Peter says, my life is a living hell. Then we zoom in on the situation to reveal that MJ's there and Paul at the same resort. And this is their interaction of everyone realizing that everyone's there. And by everyone, I mean Peter, Felicia, Paul, and MJ, of course. MJ says, excuse me? He responds with, I said, wow. What a hilarious and 100% coincidental coincidence. MJ responds with, I'm not laughing. Peter is seeking for Felicia's help and goes, Felicia? And she's standing in the corner and says, it's true, Mary Jane. This little trip was my genius move. Sarcastically. Paul standing right next to Felicia and questions her, was it snapshot coupon? She goes, "Yep, targeted marketing wins again." He goes, "I'm deleting that app." And she says, "I'm throwing away my phone." We cut over to Peter and he goes, "Ha! Well, we have to laugh about it, right? We're all adults. We're friends." And the room just turns silent and they all just stare at him. MJ has the most kill stare. Peter continues by saying, "Let's not let a crazy twist of fate ruin our prospective romantic weekends." MJ questions, "Romantic, huh?" He says, "Yes." Felicia questions, "Yes, question mark?" Try platonic, period. And stop holding your robe like that. She's seen you naked. Paul starts feeling super awkward over the situation, so starts weaseling his way out of the situation with MJ. And he says, "Anyone else warm? I mean, there are fire plates all over the..." and starts speaking incoherently, trying to get out of there. MJ says, "It would be rude to just leave dinner, Paul. Not as rude as stalking a person." Peter says, "There was no stalking. I mean, not this time. Yes, in the past. But..." You know what? Peter, at this point, he immediately stands up because he, I guess, doesn't want to deal with the situation. But in doing so, his towel gets caught. But he doesn't realize he continues talking. "The last thing I want to do is ruin your guys' weekend. I promise it was a kooky coincidence. I'm sorry it happened. And if you want us to leave, we'll go. No hard feelings." As I mentioned before, his towel gets caught. The artwork makes it seem like Peter is outright flashing everyone. Which, technically he is, but he's covered. But in this particular panel, from the angle, it just looks like he's outright hanging loose. MJ says, "You know what? It's okay, Pete. I believe you." Felicia says, "Wow. The words escape me." And of course, we were misled. He's not hanging loose. He's actually wearing boxers. But the boxers actually give us his intent, because it's just quoted over and over on the boxers, "Here, kitty, kitty." Oh man, that's even worse. That's even worse than just hanging loose. Oh man. He starts panicking and goes, "No, no, 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 no." Felicia says, "Were you going to sprinkle catnip on the comforter?" MJ says, "A chilled bowl of milk is more his style." Felicia responds with, "Classy." MJ says, "That's your man, Felicia." All of a sudden, everything starts rumbling and everyone's freaking out. Of course, Peter gets up like a Chad and says, "I'm so embarrassed. The world shook." Felicia says, "Doubtful. Are we tinkling?" And he goes, "No immediate danger, but I know that rumble." He's familiar with it. Felicia grabs Peter by the arm and starts walking out of this situation with MJ and Paul. And as they're walking out, she says, "We need to go upstairs right now. Enjoy your weekend, lovebirds." Then Peter says, "Lucky me." MJ's wondering, "Peter?" And he says, "It's gonna be alright," as he's being led by Felicia. Then we're left with Paul and MJ alone. And Paul says, "Who would have thought? Novelty boxers." And she says, "Yours are much cuter, hun." Paul says, "You're such a sweet talker. You okay, MJ?" And she responds with, "Yeah, I'm good." I'm assuming, of course, referring to this overall awkward as hell situation. Both Spider-Man and Black Cat make their way over to the mountain where the rumble was coming from. And throughout the entire travel, Spider-Man's just talking. And he's saying, "It's the harmonic nature of the wave that gave it away. Sure, there is the occasional quake upstate, but those have a discernible epicenter along the fault line. It's actually not the same as the Shocker's powers, which are unidirectional." And then he slowly realizes once they start getting closer and cuts himself off, but continues talking and says, "I've been talking since we left, haven't I?" Black Cat says, "Spider-splaining. Literally told me what an earthquake was. Twice. And I let you, because I know that seeing MJ set you into a spiral." Spider-Man says, "Why are you telepathic right now? And also, not jealous?" She says, "I like MJ. I see the attraction. I know the history, and I'm a grown-up. So just admit that you're holding a torch for her and we can move on." And he says, "That feels like the opposite of what I should do with your claws that close to my jugular." Referring to, of course, her hand claws around his shoulders. And she says, "You have to call a thing by name before you can get past it. All relationships thrive or fail by a measure of trust, Spider. Trust me with the truth, even if you don't trust yourself." Spider-Man's about to talk and says, "Cat eye." but gets cut away. He immediately grabs Black Cat and jumps away because they just got hit by an explosion, and he's telling her to hold on, and she's questioning him. Found our shocker? He responds with, yes, only to reveal that there's 6 villains in the area. We have like a Doc Ock, a Goblin, the Bunny Girl from the earlier issues, a Vulture, a Shocker, a Mysterio. You kind of get the point. And they're just going at it at each other. But they do look a little off. The villain that looks like Doc Ock, with his arms and everything, he's screaming, "Kill the Wabbit! Kill the Wabbit!" as he's attacking the bunny girl. The White Rabbit says, that explains why you're such a big fella. You've got an extra 50-year-old crammed into that millennial body making jokes. She maneuvers into a position where she can finally attack someone. She then sees someone and says, here's another outdated reference for ya. Bazinga! And attacks the Vulture character that's flying around. White Rabbit continuously just jumps around and she says, want a little Yakov Smirnoff, early Simpsons? I know 'em all. She feels sudden shock, only to reveal to us that the Mysterio character has her by the throat. And he says, I prefer the sweet silence of defeat. Sleep. She says, that's legit creepy, dude. Not gonna lie. 3 drops of terror pee out of 5. And we see Spider-Man and Black Cat off in the distance. So they're seeing this happen. When Spider-Man joins the interaction, he webs up the Mysterio character by the helmet, and he brings his own TV show reference and says, hate to be that guy, but it's actually duck season, so... leaving Mysterio to lose grip on White Rabbit. Black Cat jumps in and knocks the glider person off the glider, and she sighs and says, is nothing sacred? Upstate New York was so quiet before the hipsters invaded. And Spider-Man says, but the thrift stores carry much better merch. Nice fit, lady. White Rabbit gets up and she says, aw hell. Black Cat questions, Sinister Six reunion? In accordance to the situation. And Spider-Man says, Doc Ock would never go shirtless. Self-image issues? This dude is feeling himself big time. Referring to the rando that's wearing the Doc Ock equipment. One of the random villains that's there says, new objective, crush the spider. Skin the cat. White Rabbit has to yell and says, time out. And Black Cat's aware of the situation and she questions, is this the 3rd grade? Spider-Man's like, but it worked. They stopped. Is there a new set of rules for bad guys? Cause no one texted me. That was a pretty good joke, not gonna lie. And the Mysterio character is questioning, what's the issue? White Rabbit says, these aren't paid actors. They're the real deal. One of the villains goes and whispers, excuse me? And then Kareem shows up out of nowhere. If you've been reading the series, Kareem is basically a character that Spider-Man saved at one point, and then Kareem himself saved Spider-Man. So they're very well acquainted with each other. But Kareem works with the White Rabbit, which works for Tombstone. But anyways, Kareem is there, and he's like, hey, Spider-Man. And of course, Spider-Man is shocked. He's like, Kareem? How's things? And he's like, you know, not great all of a sudden. And as this is happening, the White Rabbit character goes up to the Mysterio character and starts getting all cuddly up to him. And he questions, are we in trouble? As he sees the situation go down. And White Rabbit goes, no babe, we're good. Spidey's cool. Spider-Man is just awfully confused over what's happening here. We cut back to the resort lodge, where we get a voice out of frame that's just saying, you don't gather the best and brightest minds of this generation without celebrating. Hence the most unique, most synergist launch party for a startup ever conceived. We cut to reveal that Spider-Man's talking with Mysterio and White Rabbit. Spider-Man says, but you realize that, like, everything in this room aside from the Eames chairs is a weapon of mass destruction? And the Mysterio character says, former WMDs, I assure you. The tech has all been upgraded and modified to include the latest safety features. White Rabbit says, it's basically glorified paintball Webby. Spider-Man says, shocker caused an earthquake 10 miles away. White Rabbit starts walking away with Mysterio and giving him kisses and says, a glitch. Michael fixed it. He's got magic hands. And I'm assuming that's the Mysterio character. Michael, that's his name. And as they're walking away and kissing each other, Spider-Man says, ew, can you seriously eat with that happening? And Black Cat responds with, I had dinner plans, but something went wrong. And he says, moving on. Spider-Man goes up to Kareem and starts questioning him. And he asks, you're good with all this? And he says, hell no. Doing what I'm told keeps me alive. This is not what I was told. We're supposed to sell the tech, give Tombstone his money, and get back to the usual. And Spider-Man says, that's not actually better, but Continue. The random .cock character interrupts and it says, lightning round. Spider-Man's confused and says, wait, what now? And he continues and says, the suit reinforced polymer blend with the variable charged nano armor. And Spider-Man says, obviously, but I'm in the middle of. Oh, that's so funny. This dude just shows up, interrupts Spider-Man just to tell him this useless bit of information. Oh, that's hilarious. I love that. Spider-Man continues talking to the random Shocker character, and the Shocker character says, the webs, hyper-compressed, fluorocarbons with a variable nozzle. Spider-Man says, ha, software guy, right? My wrist would either weigh 1,000 pounds or be a block of ice for compressed gas to work. Compressed chain molecules expand directionally based on the introduction of the hydrogen, my own design. And you see as Spider-Man's getting heated in this conversation, Black Cat's just behind him like, cuts him off and whispers into his ear and says, nerding out with entitled felons. Adorable. Spider-Man says, and, I'll tell you all about it once we determine the crime status here, okay? Kareem enters the frame again and says, Spider-Man, seriously, hosting parties for rich boys and girls to play supervillains ain't my job. I know I don't got the right, but I need some backup here. Tombstone finds out about this side gig. At this moment, White Rabbit comes back, and just by the art visuals, it is insinuated that she just went down with that Mysterio villain character because she's adjusting her bunny ears as she's walking in. But she starts talking and says, Tombstone won't find out because we're not going to tell him. And then she asks them, how is my face? Black Cat responds with, flush with passion. And then we cut off that weird insinuation of her dicking down Mysterio. And Black Cat says, for what it's worth, I think it's brilliant. Why sell the tech once when you can rent it out over and over? That's incredibly logical for some villains. Well, this is Spider-Man and Black Cat's date. This is what's happening. White Rabbit off frame gives Black Cat a compliment and says, she gets the hustle. White Rabbit continues by saying, also the tech schmucks looking for a thrill are a lot less of a safety hazard than the dips who want to do actual crime with these goods. Spider-Man says, that's sort of true, until one of them gets hungry for more than war games. White Rabbit says, Bug Boy wouldn't know backroom rules, but I bet Catty does, referring to Black Cat next to him. And Black Cat says, taking the fifth. Spider-Man holds her by the shoulder and says, really? White Rabbit continues by saying, customer gets too handy with the merch, they lose their hands. White Rabbit gets out close to Kareem and says, once word spreads, we're gonna make 10 times what we would have made on sale. Tombstone gets paid, and so do we. Winning everywhere. Spider-Man looks over at Black Cat super confused and questions, we're not actually gonna let them do this. Black Cat responds with, of course not. But this caviar, Black Cat responds with, of course not. But this caviar goes for $1,000 an ounce. So let's humor them until I'm full. So yeah, these villain guys are actually some very tech-savvy nerds that pay money to play with these villain toys. We cut over to the one that's wearing the Doc Ock arms, and he says, to the greatest weekend in history of weekends, to the next great social media app, to an epic team-up, to our fearless CEO, Michael. Someone starts asking, where is that man? The goblin villain nerd starts looking for him, and he opens up a door and he's yelling, yo, Michael, get your butt out here so we can toast the fire up the next round. Spider-Man's questioning in the background. About that, not teaming up. All of a sudden there's a scream out of frame, and Spider-Man says, that's not a good sound. White Rabbit says, start filming, Kay. We get revealed that Michael's on the ground. The Mysterio character, mind you again, is on the ground, with White Rabbit's umbrella pierced through his skull. They all turn back to look at White Rabbit, and she says, damn, he was a really good kisser. And as Black Cat's looking over at White Rabbit, she says, you are a broken person. Then we see Spider-Man starts getting a shadow over him, and he turns around slowly and says, so we got a problem in the kitchen, as you probably heard. I'm gonna need everyone to take off your tech and just chill, referring to other superpowered nerds. And then the Vulture nerd says, I didn't get kicked out of MIT so I could go to jail. And the Goblin one says, same, except I graduated with honors. And the Shocker nerd says, sorry Spidey, I really am a huge fan, and the Doc Ock one says, safety's off. So all these nerds look like they're basically ready to tussle. We come back to Black Cat, Spider-Man, White Rabbit, and Kareem, who are just cornered now. And Spider-Man looks over at White Rabbit and asks, you installed the remote kill switches, right? White Rabbit responds with, would it surprise you to learn I can barely turn on my phone? And Kareem's just like, damn it, Rabbit. And to be continued. And that's how that story ends. Let's talk about the positives first. The writing was something that was significantly better in this one for sure, compared to the previous issues. It's way less cringe and actually feels like a story you can follow and not have to force your way through just because you're a Spider-Man fan. And we get some jokes that were actually funny. We got characters that actually don't feel hollow. We get more of Peter Parker's love life with Felicia, but unfortunately, as we saw, they just so happened to book Getaway Resort at the same time as MJ and Paul. So that was super awkward, especially when Peter ended up flashing everyone and revealing his hardcore boxers. They ended up building like a genuine confusion when it came to what was happening with, you know, all the chaos that Spider-Man and Black Cat encountered in the mountains. I also like how they modernized it by having like these new tech startups spend an absurdly large sum of capital just goofing off and playing with villain toys. And with that tech party, they did end up building a nice little mystery for the next issue. As for cons, well, I honestly couldn't think of any, so if you ended up reading the story yourself and you can come up with any cons yourself, make sure to leave them in the comments below and I'll read them and see if I can make sense of it, see if it'd be valid. But anyways, I appreciate you guys for listening to me talk about this week's Spider-Man comic, and if you want to hear more, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.